The mood was electric inside the studio as the band played a smooth jazz intro, setting the stage for one of the most iconic voices in Hollywood. Jimmy Kimmel's face lit up as he turned to the camera, saying with a grin, "Ladies and gentlemen, the legend himself, Morgan Freeman." The crowd erupted in applause as the revered actor walked onto the set with his signature calm and dignified stride. Dressed in a tailored dark suit and holding his hands neatly in front, Freeman gave a small nod to the audience, then to Jimmy. They embraced lightly, and Jimmy gestured toward the guest chair. The music faded. "Morgan, it's an absolute honor," Jimmy began, leaning forward. "The last time you were here, we talked about penguins and prison walls. Tonight, we've got a little more to dig into." Freeman chuckled softly, his deep voice immediately silencing the room. "Jimmy, I've been doing interviews for 40 years. I've seen what digging really looks like." The audience laughed gently, but Jimmy pressed ahead. "You've made some strong comments lately, political ones, and some people were surprised. Do you think it's your place as an actor to weigh in like that?" A flicker passed across Morgan's eyes. He sat back in his chair. "When you reach my age, and you've lived through the things I have, segregation, war, Hollywood, you don't ask permission to speak, you just speak." The crowd responded with respectful claps, but Jimmy's smile turned tighter. "Sure, but I think the question is, when celebrities get political, does it alienate the people who just want to enjoy the art?" Morgan looked at him, the warmth in his expression cooling. "The people who can't separate the truth from entertainment are the ones already lost, Jimmy." Silence followed. The tension crept in like a quiet storm. Jimmy shifted slightly, in his chair, not used to being challenged so directly this early in a segment. "Well," Jimmy said after a beat, "that's fair, but let me be blunt. Your comments about the state of race in America rubbed some people the wrong way. You said, quote, racism is sustained more by those who talk about it than those who live it." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Morgan remained still. "And I stand by it," he said. "People keep the wound open so they can keep selling the bandage. If we keep measuring everything in race, we'll never measure anything in truth." Jimmy straightened in his seat, visibly caught off guard. "But don't you think that kind of thinking lets a lot of people off the hook, that it dismisses real injustice?" Freeman's tone deepened. "I don't dismiss injustice. I lived it. But if every headline tells young people that they're doomed before they try, how do they ever believe in themselves? How do they move forward if all they hear is that the deck is stacked and they can't win?" Jimmy glanced toward the audience, then back to Morgan. "I just don't want to give people the impression that we're saying everything is fine now, because it's not." Morgan's expression tightened. "I never said it was fine. I said it's not fixed by repeating the same grievance over and over. You want real change? Then empower. Don't paralyze." The crowd was silent now. Some nodded. Others looked confused, unsure how to react. Jimmy exhaled. "You know, a lot of younger activists watching this might say you're out of touch." Morgan's eyebrows raised. "They can say what they like, but I come from a time where speaking up could get you killed. So don't tell me about activism from behind a smartphone." The audience gasped. Jimmy tried to smile, but his jaw clenched. "Wow, that's a strong take." "It's not a take," Morgan said. "It's a life lived." Jimmy sat back, his arms folded across his chest now. He wasn't smiling anymore. "So what should young people do then? Just accept it, move on, forget history?" Morgan looked at him, eyes sharp now, cutting through the air. "No one forgets history. But if you're living in chains of the past, then you're not building a future. And some people love those chains, Jimmy. They're comfortable. They justify everything, even failure." Jimmy let out a soft laugh, but it was forced. "So you're saying struggle is a choice?" "Sometimes, yes," Morgan replied without hesitation. "There are systems, sure, but there's also will. There's drive, there's responsibility. You can be a victim of circumstances, or you can rise despite them. That's the part people don't want to hear. Jimmy now seemed defensive. You do know you're sounding a bit like some of the very people who oppose progress? Morgan's face turned stern. No, I sound like someone who knows that real progress doesn't come from guilt or grievance. It comes from grit. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some applauded. Others remained quiet. Jimmy leaned forward. You sure you want to die on that hill? Because Twitter's going to eat this up. Morgan leaned back, calm again. Let them. I've been eaten by worse beasts. The band didn't play. The air was heavy. Jimmy's smile had fully vanished. He looked toward the side camera, then back at Morgan. You know, you're free to walk off this set if you think this is beneath you. Morgan stood up. You're right. Gasps rippled through the studio. I am. The moment Morgan Freeman rose from his seat, the atmosphere in the studio shifted dramatically. Audience members leaned forward, some whispering, others instinctively, raising their phones, unsure if this was part of a bit or something far more real. Jimmy, caught off guard by Morgan's calm resolve, tried to keep the moment from slipping too far out of control. Morgan, come on, he said with an uneasy laugh. This is just a conversation. We can disagree, can't we? But Freeman didn't sit back down. He stood with the same steady posture that had commanded screens for decades. It stopped being a conversation when you tried to twist my words into something ugly, he said. I came here expecting honesty, not a staged cross-examination. Jimmy stood too now, his voice rising. I wasn't twisting anything. I'm just asking the questions people are already asking. You're the one walking out, not me. Morgan nodded slightly. That's because I've said my piece. And if the truth doesn't sit well here, maybe the seat was never meant for truth in the first place. There was a smattering of applause from one corner of the audience, while others watched in stunned silence. Jimmy tried again to regain control. This show is about voices, all kinds. You're the one who's shutting it down by walking out. Morgan turned slowly toward the camera. No, I'm walking out because too many of these so-called conversations are just traps, baited with outrage and disguised as dialogue. I've lived through real struggle, and I won't be reduced to a soundbite just so you can look provocative. For 10 minutes, the production team watched helplessly from the wings as the moment unraveled. Jimmy looked off stage, signaling the band to play something, anything, to cover the growing silence. But no one moved. The silence stretched, longer than anyone expected, each second adding to the thick tension hovering in the studio. The house lights felt hotter, the air stiffer. Morgan glanced at the audience again, his gaze sweeping the faces frozen between disbelief and admiration. Do you know how many times I've been told to shut up politely? He asked, his voice now even and reflective. In boardrooms, on film sets, even in the street, always with a smile, always with the pretense of respect. He looked squarely at Jimmy. That's what this feels like. Jimmy, still standing behind his desk, crossed his arms. I'm not trying to silence you, I just think what you said needs pushback. This is a place where ideas get challenged. Morgan's brow furrowed. Challenge is not the same as cornering. You wanted a confrontation, not a conversation. And now you've got it, but you don't get to decide how I respond. The crowd started clapping again, more boldly this time. The applause rolled like a wave through the room, not wild, but steady and sure. Morgan turned, preparing to walk off stage. Jimmy called after him, voice harder now. You're going to walk away from one of the biggest platforms in television over this? Morgan paused, then looked back. You think this platform is big? Try standing up for what you believe in when no one's clapping, no one's watching. And everything's at stake. That's a big platform. His words landed like thunder, echoing in the stunned silence. Jimmy tried to speak, but the weight of Morgan's departure made the next words feel hollow. The cameras followed, as Freeman walked calmly but firmly toward the curtain. One of the assistants stepped in his path, but he waved them off with a gentle motion. There was no drama in his exit, only finality. Back at the desk, Jimmy stood frozen, unsure whether to chase the moment or cut to commercial. "Ladies and gentlemen, Morgan Freeman," he finally said, voice strained and uncertain. But the applause that followed was uneven. Some clapped out of reflex, others out of genuine respect. A few remained quiet, visibly processing what they had just witnessed. One camera caught Jimmy adjusting his suit jacket, trying to reset his composure. "Well," he said, forcing a grin, "that was unexpected. Let's take a quick break." But before the screen faded to black, one final image